Well, Rich, it is a delight to have you on the business of intuition. I know you and I spent a few minutes kind of getting to know each other. And of course, I'm quite impressed by your background and the fact that in your early 50s, you ran the New York City Marathon. I am like like impressed knowing that I've done a little bit of running, but I've never run that far. I think maybe I've run my entire record has been 7.5 miles, but the fact that you did what 26.2,
that's right,
26.4,
26.2.
That's incredible. That's great. What was the I know you started telling me this, but this is the question I forgot to ask you. What was the charity that you were running for?
Oh yeah, great charity, Jar of Hope, and it's for addressing an unsolved disease. There's no cure for it right now. It's Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It affects young boys, and it's a muscle wasting disease. And Jar of Hope, I'll tell you what, Jim Raffone is the dad of the son, Jamesy, who was affected by it. And this guy goes to all ends of the earth to do anything he can to not only raise awareness, but address finding a cure. I mean, this guy is just an amazing individual. And so he asked me to be a part of his team, the Jar of Hope team, to run the New York City Marathon. And it was all charity-based, so I had to raise money for it, and I'll gladly did that. But what an amazing charity. I mean, when I did it in 2016, we might have had 15 to 20 people on the team. I think he goes out now with a team of like 50 or 60 people at the New York City Marathon. And, just kudos to him and all the work that he's doing. But so many giving people have been a part of that cause. And I was really just I thought it was a very special thing for me to participate in. So, of course, I wanted to do it.
Well, good for you. Good for you for giving back. So I guess the topic of our conversation today, Rich, is really about what you would call being a well-balanced leader. And I think that we certainly have heard phrases around work-life balance and making sure that we're not overstressed. And there's certainly a big push towards resilience and agility. And certainly after COVID, we know that the stress levels have become all-time high. And we've got our current Surgeon General by the name of Vivek Murthy was saying that loneliness and stress are now in epidemic levels that have actual physical coefficient issues. That is really, we're in a bad spot. I mean, this is not great. And of course, now we're into an election year. It's 2024 when you and I are having this conversation. There's uncertainty about the markets. There's uncertainty about interest rates and who's going to be our president. And while the economy seems to be chugging along, people are still feeling nervous and scared. And we're almost into a pattern of fear. There's one guy I interviewed from the UK a while back, and he said that we kind of have been given a dose of fear porn, he called it, which I thought was an interesting turn of phrase. Provocative for sure,
yes,
but got the point across that we're sort of swimming in an ocean of worry and concern. So I think the topic around how do you cut through that and overcome sort of the addictions to fear and addictions to being out of balance. I would love to get your thoughts on this. So let me also just sort of tee up another quick thing, which is somebody was talking to me recently about, and it goes into your topic, around that the biggest, skill that we've been saying for a long time for executives is self-awareness. And it kind of got me thinking that maybe it is important, but there's something before self-awareness that's important, which is focus. And our inability right now to stay focused is becoming more and more challenging, which I think has a direct relationship to our ability to be self-aware, which ultimately relates to our ability to create more balanced lives, right? If we don't have the intentionality and the focus, then how can we actually have the intentionality and the focus to be able to be in more of a balanced leader?
Yes.
To your point. So I guess as a long lead in, Rich, give us a quick, high level, elevator. Who the hell are you, man?
Okay.
And what is your background and why is this topic so important to you?
Okay, absolutely. I appreciate that. And Dean, I'm really, really excited to be in this conversation with you on the podcast. My name is Rich Bruno, and I live in Freehold, New Jersey. I had a 30-year supply chain leadership career across 3 major companies. Had a wonderful, amazing career, always focused on leading others and talent management and development. I think a common thread for me would be that I really like having an impact on other people, right? So I had a 30-year supply chain leadership career. I also have a small business in the health and fitness space called the Max Challenge. And that is all about helping people live happier, healthier lives. I've been doing that for about 11 years. And in the last 5 years, I've been coaching and consulting executives and small business owners. And again, that ties to wanting to have an impact and genuinely wanting to help others, right? So that's really the common thread in terms of what's about me. I retired almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years in May from Johnson & Johnson, an amazing company. I left an outstanding career working with great people. But I retired because I recognized that the pace I was going at with having a small business as a very active owner-operator for 7 years, my pace was pretty insane, while also raising 3 small children with my wife, right? And so I got to realize just before I turned 55 that the grind was really tough. And I needed to rethink what I was doing and try to improve my quality of life. And that's what drove me to retire from Johnson & Johnson. It was literally 2 weeks after I turned 55. And I did it to take back time. There's only so much time that we get, right? It's finite. And I think that's what gets lost in this whole well-balanced leader concept, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. But I was craving more time. People thought I was crazy. My twins were 14. My youngest daughter was 11. They're like, you're retiring at 55? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And I got to tell you, Dean, I did it with such conviction. Without a doubt, I knew I was doing the right thing because I knew it would improve my quality of life and give me back the time that I was craving. I did everything with my family, but I raced through everything. So now I was going to pump the brakes a little bit, slow down. And you had a phrase, I know on your podcast, you say, I think it's amplify your impact while simplifying your life. That's exactly what I did. I amplified my impact by shifting my focus to my family and my small business. Without having a lot of plates spinning at the same time, I just slowed things down. And I got to tell you, looking back, absolutely no regrets. I am living my best life. So I focused on my small business and then months later pivoted to getting certified as a John Maxwell coach, speaker, and trainer and started coaching individuals, small businesses, and executives and teams in a lot of different disciplines like workshops, trainings, individual coaching, organizational needs assessments, and many other things. But I'm living a very fulfilled life, and everyone has that opportunity. And so that's my pitch to everyone. Don't let time pass you by.
It's a great point, and you make me think, Rich, about a good friend of mine who lives nearby, who also seemed to have the blessing of being able to retire at 55. Some of us who are listening going, hey, that sounds great, man, but I just don't have the financial portfolio to do that. I'm going to have to live for another, not live, but I have to work for another 10, maybe even 15 years just because of lifestyle pressures or the kind of work that I do or my, whatever situation. I just don't have that ability. But the other thing that I think is important that I wanted to ask you was I get into this conversation with my friend a lot, which is he goes, Dean, you should be retiring, man. You should be out there and let's go play golf. And why are you going to work? It's Tuesday. Let's go ski. And I'm going like, yeah, I get it. And I also love what I do. I drippingly love this work, right? And so even if I weren't paid, I would still be doing this stuff. I'd be writing a book. I'd be doing some seminars, whatever. So for me, this kind of work is really fulfilling. And I don't necessarily, here's the trick, is that the thing that you love to do sometimes can be so consuming that it does start to put you out of balance, right? You're in love with the work that you do, and you're putting in 15-hour days, and you're beginning to find yourself out of balance in some other spot. So I guess the question that I come back to you is, for those of us who are not going to retire at 55 for whatever reason and don't pivot in that way that you did, but love what they do, but still at the same time maybe overdo it, what's your recommendation?
That is a great point, and I should have mentioned that. I realize not everyone can retire. Very first thing I did, I'm a very thoughtful person. I checked the financial box. I asked the right questions to the right people and said, okay, I can do this and shift my focus to a business that I had. Not everyone has that. That said, I also am a big proponent of do what you love, right? Like I
Yeah.
said, back to there's only so much time. I was blessed. I was very passionate about any work I ever did in my corporate career, as well as what I'm doing outside of the corporate arena. And so that's a big motivator for me. So I would tell everybody, first of all, do what you love doing. Okay, you can't retire. I don't even consider what I did retiring. I just shifted gears to do something else,
Mm,
right? So yeah, I retired from the corporate arena, but I didn't retire. I'm not sitting on a couch. Like I'm busy, I'm
I
hustling,
get it.
I am chasing after what I love to do. So first thing I'd say, do what you love to do. If you don't love doing it, find something else to do that meets whatever your conditions are financially and otherwise. But in terms of getting out of the balance, and we'll talk about the well-balanced leader in a minute, but what I would say is it's really a matter of being self-aware and shifting your priorities. I don't know that the word balance is really appropriate because if you went to a corporate executive and said, hey, get some balance, they're going to say, you know what, I got this 15-hour a day job. And that's what it demands of me. But I would say, okay, find ways to integrate fun for you, right? Don't lose sight of you. What about your self-care? What about your relationships, your own personal needs, right? You need
Mm.
to find the space for that. And you know what? It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of self-awareness. But what I would say is don't be one-dimensional, right? Shift your priorities so that you can get your needs met in other areas, not just professionally.
So, Rich, do you think that uh, so much here? It's a rhetorical question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Are some of us addicted to a pace of life that ultimately has some aspect of self sabotage?
No question about it. I can't give you studies and data, but I will tell you from many people that I talk to, it is a bit of self-sabotage because some people crave that. They're motivated by, I'm the king or queen of the hill, right? So like it all stops at buck stops at me kind of thing. And they thrive on that responsibility and all of that comes along with it. So it can be addicting. And look, if you love doing that, that's great. But my point is, without having other elements of your life, that one dimensional space you're in will run its course and you'll be done. At some point in time, you are going to retire, right? So that corporate executive that is all about 10xing their business and being the best rock star executive there is, that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, when you realize, okay, the work is done, and you go to live the rest of your life, God willing, there needs to be something to go to. What are you going to go to? Do you have a hobby? Do you take care of yourself? Do you have relationships, family, friends, and interests? Or were you so consumed in your professional space that you lost all of that? And that's what the well-balanced corporate leader is all about. The philosophy there is you can have a totally fulfilled life so long as you're self-aware and you shift priorities to make sure you're addressing the things that you need for yourself.
Absolutely. Recently, within the last year, I was witness to my mother's slow demise and eventual death.
Sorry.
And no, it's all fine. I have no regrets about my relationship with her. It was just beautiful. And I noticed how she was always a doer in her life. I always saw her as the person, I suppose some of my doerness came from her or was motivated by her. And I noticed and watched her struggle with letting go. And this was the ultimate existential letting go, which was that of life, that of this mortal coil, if you will. And the fear that was there for her and the outright confusion about how to do this process, right? And so I'm watching her and she's asking these questions through the cloud of dementia and painkillers and so forth, that she was sort of a representation of the struggle the rest of us go through, maybe unconsciously on a daily basis, which is how do we let go into the present? How do we let go of this grind, this hamster wheel of doing, those of us who are in that and easily find ourselves victim or prey to it, how do we let go of that? And I think it kind of taught me, and it gave me the example of it never ends, unless you decide to create some balance, unless you decide to do the work that you do, be with the people you love, at the same time, be present, really be present. Because being present means you're not about making the next thing happen at lightning speed. It's about being able to have moments of slowing down, to your point. And I don't know, I wanted to get your reaction to that and see what your thoughts were with respect to the notion that self-awareness and prioritization requires that intentionality to be present and to really, be in the moment and face what's there. And, what's your thoughts?
I love all of this. I love that word, intentionality. Prioritization is something I do a lot of myself, but also with a lot of the people that I work with. And it's very interesting. Sometimes the things they think are really important, when we go through the exercise, they realize are not that important, right? So the being present part also very much about me, right? So I want to completely be a part of whatever I'm in the moment. I don't want to be multitasking. I want to be present 100%. And that requires making choices. So to the point of your mom being the doer and people being that hamster on the wheel, and I jumped off, as I explained to you, right? with deciding to retire at 55. I kind of slowed that down. So that was a choice, right? So the point of all of this is, unless you step back, stop, think, become more self-aware of what's going on around you and what your tendencies are, without being intentional about making choices, you'll just keep that pattern up. Instead of stepping back and saying, you know what? My family, my career, my self-care are the three most important things to me. I'm going to make sure my calendar's full of that stuff, right? Yeah. The intentionality is about what you spend your time on, right? So that's it in a nutshell. It's making choices and being intentional about. I'm very much about that. I mean, my calendar is my roadmap. I am such, I was so locked into using my calendar to drive how I spend my time. And for me, that just works. It's very helpful to me, because now I know, okay, I made a conscious decision to spend time on these things. I said earlier in the conversation that we had that time's finite. I'm certainly not someone that wants to waste it, right? And I think that might have even been part of the subconscious, in my subconscious, when I decided to retire. I probably realized, you know what? Look, as we age, we recognize mortality even more, right? We don't know how much time we have, right?
Absolutely.
It wasn't like I was 30
for all of us,
or 40. I was in my mid-50s, now almost 35, 40 days from becoming 60, right? So to me, I want to get every moment I can, right? So that's where the choices tie into even professionals, not just your mom, but any senior leader who is so purely driven about the demands and driving results. It's stepping back and being intentional about those choices so that you can be fulfilled outside of work.
So, I'm I don't know why I'm bringing in family today. I guess
it's
I'm
all right.
on a family thought.
I'm a family guy.
I want to switch to the other side of my family, which was my dad. What I noticed when he retired, he had a very purposeful job. He was a reporter for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune for like 35 years. And he was sort of the old school, let's take 2 weeks to study a story before you actually publish it. We don't necessarily have that kind of investigative journalism anymore. But nonetheless, he really felt, rightfully so, that he was doing something that mattered. There was purpose behind what he was all about.
Right.
And identity and prestige and all this stuff that gets wrapped up into your career, that whether it's being a reporter or a coach or whatever, an executive, you could certainly see the corollary. When he retired, it was different. He all of a sudden sort of lost a sense of identity. And, in some sense, that in the quietness of an empty house, because his wife at the time was still working, he had to look in the mirror and see himself and deal with whatever he had to deal with, And the existential questions about who am I? What am I all about? What I want to do now? I wonder at times if the pace that we give ourselves or that we put ourselves through is one, we want to accomplish things. Two, we know we have a limited amount of time on this planet. So, gosh darn it, the clock is ticking, get with it. And three, we may not want to take a look at some stuff that we're avoiding. That the pace of our lives is an avoidance tactic. Thoughts? What do you think?
Absolutely. Look, let's look at it in terms of your day-to-day work, right? I'll use that as an example. How many times do you find yourself, maybe even, and I know a lot of people that do this, they have a long list of things to do. They do the easy stuff first. They leave the hard stuff for later, right? So that's like an avoidance tactic, right? Oh, I'll leave the hard stuff. You read Eat That Frog. It's all about doing the hard stuff first, right? So yes, I absolutely believe you can get buried in things to drive you away from something that you might not want to deal with. But when it comes to the retirement, if I could just pivot to that for a second, related to your dad, here's something that I think is very important. Like, I've seen people, my dad's retired, right? And, that transition, not everybody makes it smoothly.
Right.
And I want to go back to that word intentionality or being intentional. And I think you need to think through what that might look like. Some people retire because they just need to get out of their job. Look, I'm done. I've done enough. I want to do nothing. They think the grass is greener, right? They go to the greener grass and like, what did I do? Like, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself? Oh, I don't even have any hobbies or interests, right? So I think it's very important that you try to think through how you can gracefully transition. And some people have a harder time than others, but that's also why I think everyone needs an exit strategy. Whether you have a small business, whether you're in a corporate, role as a senior leader, whether you are an individual making a transition from a lifestyle in one way to another, everyone needs an exit strategy. And that requires some planning. But not everybody that goes to retire plans. They just like, what, if I'm done, I want to tap out. And they go and then they have to find themselves again. And that becomes a little bit unfortunate for them because they realize they didn't invest in themselves pre-retirement to have a more fulfilled and a higher quality of life when they do retire.
You mentioned that word or that phrase, invest in themselves. I want to sort of highlight or underline and bold that, italicize that a little bit. There's a certain interesting irony around that, which is I noticed that the purpose by which a person is so invested in, say, giving to other people can be enhanced by simply doing what you just said, investing in themselves. And the way in which they invest in themselves is directly the same thing that they would hope other people to do. So here's an example that might make this more clear. I was doing, I was done some work, a lot of work in healthcare, and the irony with healthcare providers, which their purpose is to be able to increase the length and the quality of their patients' lives. One would say that's probably their main purpose to existence, right?
Yes,
is
absolutely.
To increase the quality and the length of the people's lives. So they're all about creating for their patients this lifestyle around health. Well, the irony is sometimes those healthcare providers are awful at being able to take care of themselves, that they need the product of the product as much as their client does or as their patient does,
Yes.
We've done work with, high-tech companies that are all about connecting people through technology. And you sit down and you say, what's your biggest issue? And they say, we don't feel connected to each other through technology. So there's this interesting sort of like I'm the cobbler, my kid has no shoes, right? I'm a person who's serving other people, but I'm not doing the very thing that I'm doing. I run a team building company, but I have no team. Those sort of ironies, I think, is such a great way for us to be able to learn ourselves to be examples of the product and service we're giving.
I 100% subscribe to that. So as a coach and as someone who is trying to influence others, right? I think it's critically important that I walk the talk, right? I need to be able to show, look, I've done this. I can do this. You can do this. Here's how. Let's find the path together, right? Using the
Yeah.
retirement as an example and translating that to the well-balanced leader. That's exactly what I did, right? I stepped back, assessed, I want to improve the quality of life, my quality of life. I made a choice. I made the change intentionally to get myself to the lifestyle that I wanted, right? I did that. And I want to encourage many others to do that because we just don't know how much time we have. Not to say leave a great job just because, but
Right.
be in touch with yourself. Be aware of what's going on. And if you have something that's lacking, you need to invest in those areas. And if I could for a second, I want to talk about that term, investing in yourself, because it really plays itself out in this well-balanced corporate leader concept. So just for a second for me to demonstrate, and you can go on my LinkedIn and you can see the visual, but there are 5 slices to a pie, right? For this well-balanced leader, right? And one half of the pie is split in half with leadership excellence and time management mastery. Those are clearly focused on the professional aspect, right? Great leadership skills, time management mastery carries over to your personal life as well, obviously, but you need to really have that nailed if you're going to be an effective senior leader, right? So those are the 2 first halves of the pie, right? Or the half of the pie broken into those 2 components. Then there are 3 other components that are divided on the other half of the pie, and they're all about investing in yourself. First one is self-care. I'm going to argue, and I know this because I'm a byproduct of it, self-care, you take care of yourself first, you're the best for everyone else around you, whether it's in your corporate environment, whether it's in your personal life. Self-care, taking care of yourself, that helps you to get mentally and physically well, and that helps you to be more clear and productive and energetic. Self-care is where it's at. So that's one slice of that pie. That's an investment. The next slice is continuous development or improvement. How do I continue to learn, be better, be more effective? That's an investment in yourself. The last piece of that pie is creating your legacy. And that's really one that resonates so much with me. I want to have an impact on other people's lives. That's your legacy. At the end of the day, what are people going to say about you that you did that made a difference in their lives? And that's an investment in you and others.
So, Rich, great. I'm writing this down as you're speaking here. So the first half, I had leadership excellence, and the second one, I think, on that side of the pie was something to do with time
management mastery. Time management mastery.
Yeah. And there's a lot to that. You could spend many podcasts,
oh my gosh,
episodes
absolutely,
digging into both of those.
Yes.
I really like this. This is a simple model that I think people can remember. So then the right side, again, is around self-care,
continuous improvement or development, and your legacy,
and
creating your
legacy. It's really interesting you mentioned that, just the idea of self-care being really important. That going back to, you got to take care of the source of your energy, otherwise the energy by which you are giving becomes diluted.
Yes.
You know, there's a I think a book called I don't know, it's Teams at the Top by a guy named John Katzenbach, or maybe I'm misquoting it, but basically he said that from an executive team perspective, who represents marketing, supply chain, human resources, technology, you have the very top level of people who are coming together on that executive team, all of which are leaders of major departments, right? So, but they have their own team at the very top. He said, you have to be able to develop that team, and those people on that team need to see that team as their first team, not the teams they lead, but the team that they're on is their first, most important priority. And so I use that as an analogy in that the work that we do as individuals, my first team, so to speak, is the team of me.
Yes.
Is to take care of me first. Meaning, in the same way that if I'm the head of IT, I can't take care of IT as well if I don't find my support and growth in the team that I'm on, right? I can't be a good consultant for other people or lead other individuals if I don't take care of the very first important person, which is me. I think I'm trying to create this another way of saying what you just said. So I really like that. I subscribe to it.
Yeah, no doubt. And it is so important. And that is probably one of the biggest pieces as I look at, working with teams and executives and just professionals in general, even people that I do one-on-one coaching with for personal development. What tends to be lacking is them focusing on themselves first. It's an inside-out job. It is absolutely an inside-out job. And
That's so true.
I'm going to be my best at being a dad when I've taken care of myself to the point where I can bring my whole self to them. My wife, my friends, my family. It's true. And so I have been practicing this for many, many years. I know it works. There is a solution that's driven by the chemicals in your brain that drive all of this, if you want to go to the analytics of it. But without getting really technical about it, self-care is your first stop, and then everything else flows. So when you think of the well-balanced corporate leader, the person that invests in themselves and their self-care is most physically and mentally strong and able to bring their whole self to their team, to their organization, etc.
I'm seeing this great connection here. So you go back to your model, leadership excellence and time management
Mastery,
on one side, and then investing in self-care, continuous development, and legacy on the other side. I realize how important that time management piece is to the right side, because what is difficult, he's like,
it's so true.
His head is going up and down. I must have hit a chord here. But essentially what I've noticed is that if we don't schedule the time for self-care, if we don't say every Friday between 8 and 9 is mine for developing myself, or if I don't schedule time for going to the gym or schedule time to be with my family, those things don't happen because we are always pushed upon by other outside forces to do other things because we become doers versus beers. And so I think that time management piece is a critical part around self-care. We have to put it in our calendars, and we have to get into an unconscious habit to do this stuff. Because at the first point, you might feel, I'm not used to doing this. It feels weird. But after a while, I always go to the gym at 4 or whatever. It becomes as natural as, driving to work, and you don't think about the way in which you do it, right? That's the point where we're going to get to.
100%. I was nodding emphatically when you said time management mastery, because that is absolutely the case. So just as the self-care on the left side of that pie carries over to the professional side, the time management mastery, I purposely named it that, is about being in touch with your biggest priorities and then intentionally allocating the time to make them happen. So let's use self-care as an example of that time management mastery, right? So you said establishing these routines. It seems odd at first, right? So Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning is a perfect example of this, right? Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning, or you could go to Todd Durkin's Get Your Mind Right. They both have like routines. Let's just call them routines that start in the morning. And it's all about quiet time. It's about affirmations, all perspective and mindset stuff. Then there's a physical dimension to it, right? It's exercise for a certain amount of time. Doesn't have to be terribly vigorous, right? There's journaling, there's reading for continuous learning, right? And so you do all of those things in Hal Elrod's world. It's all done in the morning, 60 to 90 minutes dedicated to you. Now imagine you start your day. That's your self-care for the day. I don't know. I'm ready to crush it after that. Absolutely. Because I have taken care of myself in so many dimensions. Learned a little, scribed a little, had some thoughts, said my affirmation, which is, I don't know if you can see it behind me, win the day, right? I say that every day. Just get up and do your best every day, right? You see how that energy is coming out from me, the mindset, the intentionality of making sure that's important. And to your point, it's like brushing your teeth every day. Basically, it's something you're going to do every day. It's part of your routine. It will become a habit, and you'll see how much it'll serve you in other aspects of your life.
Yes, absolutely. Rich, this is right on. You're like a kindred spirit on this topic. I really appreciate it. Tell the people who are listening in on this how they can follow you, learn more about what you've been talking about.
Yes, you could find me. I think the best way is to go to Linktree. Rich Bruno Consulting. You'll see all my socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, etc. You'll be able to book time. And that's a really important point. Like, at my core, I want to have an impact and help other people. So if this conversation resonated with you, I want to be a part of that solution. I would love to help you address the challenges that you have in these areas or others, right? So you can go on that link tree, Rich Bruno Consulting, go to the Calendly link, book a free 30-minute Zoom session, and I will provide you with actionable steps to address your challenges. That's what I would offer back. But getting in touch with me, again, through Linktree, I'm active on LinkedIn and other socials. And yeah, I would very much like to connect with people who really see this as something that's important to them, but maybe haven't been able to solve for it yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your message is so clear and pure, and it goes right back to the very beginning of this conversation when you donated your time and your body to a very worthy cause by running in the New York City Marathon. And it just seems to be a great way of finishing up this chat by saying thanks again. And it's just keep up the good work and keep up winning the day.
Yes, absolutely. And Dean, it was such a pleasure to connect with you. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me as well.
Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.